Alright guys, let's keep going. Now I'm going to show you guys, we're going to get into trigonometric functions, okay? So what is the derivative of the tangent with respect to theta? Why theta? You can do tangent of x with respect to x, but since we're talking about angles here, I just want to say this. I think theta is more appropriate. Okay, but since it's going to be like theta, I'm just going to do tangent, secant, cosine, cotangent, sine, okay? I'm not going to put the theta, but of course it's always the theta. Let's do this. This is going to be equal to the derivative, okay, of sine over the cosine. Of course, it's the sine of theta divided by the cosine of theta with respect to theta, okay? I'm just going to do this, sine of theta. And here you have a cosine of theta, and all this is going to be with respect to theta. So we're going to use the differentiation division rule. So it's going to be the cosine times the, I don't know if I already showed this to you guys, the differentiation of the sine. I don't know if I did. I'll tell you what. The derivative of the sine, okay, is the cosine, and the derivative of the cosine is minus sine. So if I haven't shown this, I'm going to check this out later. If I haven't shown this, I'm going to make a video about this later. So let's do this here. It'll be, so f of x is the sine of theta and g of x is the cosine of theta. So it's going to be the cosine of theta times the derivative of the sine of theta is the cosine, okay? So it's going to be the cosine squared minus f of x, which is sine, and the derivative of the cosine, which is minus sine. With this minus, it becomes a plus, okay? Divided by the cosine squared. Now what do you have here? You have that trigonometric identity that says that cosine squared plus sine squared equals 1. So this is 1 divided by the cosine squared, and this equals the secant squared. Okay? 1 divided by the cosine squared equals the secant squared. The secant squared. So the derivative of the tangent is the secant squared. Okay? And of course it's going to be of theta. Everything here is of theta. I'm just doing this to speed it up. You're going to find, by following the same thing here, that the derivative of the cotangent, I'm just going to say COT, cotangent, the derivative of the cotangent of theta with respect to theta, I'm just going to do this like that, yeah, equals the minus cosecant. Equals the minus cosecant squared of theta. All right. So the derivative of the tangent equals the secant squared, and the derivative of the cotangent equals the cosecant squared minus the cosecant squared. And how do you know this? Well, just follow this, because the cotangent is the reciprocal of the tangent. So this is going to be the cotangent equals cosine divided by the sine. Instead of being sine divided by the cosine, it's the cosine divided by the sine. So if you follow the same thing here, in the end you're going to be left with minus 1 divided by the sine squared. 1 divided by the sine squared equals the cosecant squared. Okay? So, in another example that I'm going to show here, so this is one example. This is the other one. Okay, this is just a note that I put in here. So another one is the derivative of the secant. So the derivative of the secant, okay, of theta with respect to theta. And what's the secant? The secant is 1 divided by the cosine. The derivative of 1 over the cosine with respect to theta. Okay, well, let's do this the same thing. It's going to be the cosine times the derivative of 1, which is 0, minus this one, which is just 1, times the derivative of the cosine, which is minus sine. So this is actually a plus sign here. Yeah. That's going to be minus 1 times the derivative of the cosine, which is minus sine. With this minus becomes a plus. Okay. All this divided by the cosine squared. Okay. So what do you have? You have here a sine divided by the cosine. All this times the cosine. It's the same thing. Now sine divided by the cosine is the tangent. Okay. Tangent. And 1 divided by the cosine is the secant. So the derivative of the secant equals tangent secant. The derivative of the tangent equals the secant squared. The derivative of the cotangent equals minus cosecant squared. And analogously, okay, if you do the same thing for the derivative of the cosecant of theta with respect to theta, you're going to find that it's minus the cosecant of theta times the cotangent of theta. All right, and that's it.